Okay.
This passage really kind of, Basil, can you chill for a minute? This really kind of sums up a lot of what
you're pushing the dog off screen toward your genital area. It does not translate well visually.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to point it out, but thank you for beating it to me, Dan.
Yeah, I don't beat around the bush.
So to speak.
Cocksucker, cocksucker, cock. Sorry.
In my Blade Runner.
Jesus Christ!
I think
tell us how you really feel.
I think if you were trying to sound like Nicolas Cage, you should have said cocksucker another 7 times.
Oh my God. I'm in a very odd situation right now.
Okay. I'm Dan Carlson, 1/3 of Us Three Blokes.
I'm John Kadolf, and I'm existing somewhere in some strange reality right now where
Ain't we all?
my dog he's attached to me, actually, like physically. I don't understand.
You're reabsorbing him.
I woke up and he was literally part of my body. He's sticking out the side.
Like a Quado from Total Recall.
Yeah, we will totally not see this information again.
Quaid.
Yeah.
And then, hi, I'm Dave, and I'm another member of Us Three Blokes, and I am currently drinking Shiner Black Lager.
Blacker than the blackest black times infinity.
Nice.
That's really cool.
And also...
That sounds like a Lovecraftian drink.
And also, I have Paulaner Oktoberfest.
Very nice.
There's a local beer shop called Beertopia, and they have a points program. And over the summer, basically points equate to every dollar you spend becomes a point, and then you get goodies and bonuses and such. So I broke the $300 mark today.
Nice.
I mean, not all at once.
After shopping there 4 times.
I just come walking in. Hi, I'm from Wisconsin. They're like, just take that.
Yeah.
Punch like an entire row.
They gave you a down payment on your points.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've got 2 different kinds of Angry Orchard. I've got the unfiltered crisp, and then the other one is just a regular Angry Orchard.
This tastes a lot like the kind of stuff that me and Carrie would drink at Romines in Milwaukee when we get shit-faced playing pool. So we watched The Color Purple Out of Space. It's about the color purple chasing after Nicolas Cage to try to get him to have a good acting moment, and it gets quite a few out of him.
You know, that's the thing to me. We'll get to the plot in a minute, but my one issue with this film is that Nicolas Cage kind of Nicolas Cages a lot, which is good, but there are moments when it just kind of feels like he got 2 steps ahead of the film in weirdness, and he's either like foreshadowing how weird the shit is going to get, or he's just trying way too hard. But this is a film that I absolutely I lucked out last year and I saw it in the theater. And hey, what can I say? I live in a city that has 2 Alamo draft houses, and one of them is 6 blocks from my house.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's don't think I'm not going to take advantage of that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what it was like when I was in Austin. I had an Alamo draft house, literally within walking distance, and it did show at the Oriental Theater up here, but I got the notification for it.
I let him know
after it ended.
I let him know about it while it was still showing.
Color Out of Space. Just quick overview. Mm-hmm. It is a adaptation of a well-known H.P. Lovecraft story where a meteor crashes into this guy's property, And it basically brings a color that shouldn't exist in the world, and it begins to change everything around
But
it.
it's just purple.
Yeah, but it's the resonances. It's this, it's that.
That's the only way that they can represent it. I mean,
Yeah.
I know,
in the book,
I know.
in the book, it's described as an unknown color that most closely resembles like ultraviolet purple kind of ish kind of colors. The original character's name that Nicolas Cage plays was Ami Pierce, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I've
Ami
not read
Pierce.
it. I own it, but I haven't read it.
Some friends of mine a few years ago bought me a complete omnibus edition of all things H.P. Lovecraft. I might have lost my mind. Yeah. As much as he was a racist piece of trash, I have to admit he's got a great sense of storytelling. But we'll return to all of this in a minute.
Mhm.
Yes.
But basically, the world starts changing. Things start mutating. His family starts getting even weirder than usual. And shit happens, and people mutate, and stuff goes crazy. And in the end, pretty much everybody dies. It's an H.P. Lovecraft story.
Yeah.
Except for the narrator.
Except for the narrator.
Who
Which I like
isn't the narrator for the entirety of the movie until the very end? Kind of like
Well, he actually opens up the film, though.
does he narrate at the beginning?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a
Because
little
he
bit
talks about being the person who's there doing a survey for the local dam, water company, etc.
Yeah, he's a
Okay.
geologist.
So I thought it was more of a voiceover situation, like in Seven, where they had to have like a little not a happy ending, but some sort of
Conclusion.
put some sort of splash on the end there.
Yeah. And also another reference to hold on. I'm trying to remember her name and it won't come to me, but the mother
Shirley Richardson.
Thank you.
Yes.
When she was auditioning, she was talking to Richard Stanley, and Richard Stanley said, well, you're gonna have to do a lot of like really intense makeup work and appliques and blood and stuff like that. And he was like, are you gonna be okay with that? And she went, I was in Event Horizon. Yeah, I'm good. She was the second in command in Event Horizon. I was sitting there the entire time going, I know that woman from somewhere.
Yeah, and I love that movie too. That's a very Lovecraftian film as well.
I never liked that movie, but
Really, we're gonna have to sit down. This is definitely going to be a review where you can sit down. That'll be the one where we'll come back to it, and all of us can get our points in on it.
okay.
Yeah.
But for me, I think it's a fairly straightforward film in terms of plot. But the more interesting part about it is the acting, the way that the characters react to stuff. And it's much less about the plot and more about the people in the plot. And also,
It's a movie where the least weird person is Tommy Chong.
Right. He's the one person who's actually dialed in on all this shit.
Yeah, he knows what's going on.
And it's also directed by Richard Stanley, who, if you're not familiar with his work, he did a film called Hardware. I can't remember the name. God, he did another film.
Dust Devil.
Dust Devil, which is another really great kind of science fiction horror film. And then, of course, if you want to see how a film can be an absolute utter disaster, he was the initial director and did all the pre-production for The Island of Dr. Moreau in the 1990s. And then Val Kilmer got him fired, and then we know what happened with that film immediately.
Yeah, there's a great documentary made about the fiasco called Lost Soul: The Doomed Journey of Island of Lost Souls.
Yeah, I know it was on Shudder. It might still be. I also know it was on Netflix.
Oh, nice.
And Richard Stanley doesn't always come across as the sanest person on that set either, because he kind of stalks the set after he leaves it.
To make a comparison with him, the one person who I can think of in terms of worldview and also to a degree style, although he's much more linear than this guy, but I would love to sit down and have a conversation with him and Jodorowsky.
Yeah,
because those two are like, you hear them interview, and with the exception of the accents, it almost sounds like the same person.
Mm.
Because they're both fascinated with magic. They're both fascinated with tarot cards. and they have both had disastrous relationships with Hollywood.
Although a lot of Jodorowsky, even though his version of Dune never got made, it actually was the movie that caused a lot of other movies to get made. Like Alien wouldn't exist if it wasn't for his Dune project.
Well, it was like
a lot of other things as well.
A lot of the Star Wars crew met doing the Dune stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And H.R. Giger and
Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah, Dan O'Bannon met on that set because Dan was working as a writer and a production person on his Dune.
Right.
And again, this is gonna be one of those ones that, because it's connected to so many different films and such, we're probably gonna reference a lot of stuff. But if you're in the mood to see how a film can or cannot get made, Jodorowsky's Dune is another good one to watch. And again, it's kind of a potentially planned disaster, but when you look at all of the people that were lined up to do that film, because like Pink Floyd was going to do the soundtrack.
I know.
Yeah. Like, I would love to hear Pink Floyd's take on the Dune universe.
Right. Yeah. It would have been the earlier psychedelic stuff before Dark Side, so it would have been kind of more along the lines of Echoes and Adam Hart Mother and things like that. But
if it was like Echoes, I'd be all in.
Yeah.
That is arguably outside of, I like to think of it as kind of like the pre and post Dark Side era.
Mm-hmm.
But Metal is arguably, I think, one of my favorite Pink Floyd records, just because it's right on that tipping point between where they were still experimenting and when the experiments actually turned into something way bigger than the sum of its parts. But anyway, the film. I just wanted to add. It's hard to quantify the film. I mean, it really is.
This film is, so there's a movie that was made based on this story called, what was it? It was with David, the guy from Firestarter.
Yeah, I know. And also, if you want to chuckle, because it'll tie into the other thing that we watched this week, in a weird sort of way, CREEPSHOW. The Stephen King segment in there has a lot of elements of Color Out of Space taken from it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the original CREEPSHOW.
Yeah.
It's it basically is starring
Stephen
King as the main. I mean, I think he's the only character, isn't he? He's the only.
I think he's the only character in it. Yeah.
Where a meteor hits and starts growing.
The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was based on Color Out of Space. There is also a black and white German film called, I believe, Die Farbe, or that is based on Color Out of Space, and that went like out of print and everything else, and the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society bought the rights to it and re-released it. So if you are interested in seeing pretty much one of the first takes on making this into a film, you can go to the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's website and purchase it there.
We'll post a link.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, okay. So I guess I've read the story several times and I've seen the movie several times. So it's a very good representation of what is presented in the story. So of course, you have to do a lot of embellishing when you take an H.P. Lovecraft story and turn it into a film. And I think that it was actually really artistically done. When a lot of Lovecraft stuff is hard to interpret because a lot of it is described as not able to be described.
Yeah.
He does a lot of saying things like that which cannot be named, and a color that cannot be described, and that kind of stuff, and so a director or writer has to kind of interpret that. It's almost a different language.
There's a part of me that wants a time machine to go back and stop by H.P. Lovecraft's place and have a giant fucking hat full of slips of paper with adjectives in it. And then say, look, use a few of these because later on it's going to come in real goddamn handy.
Well, you have to be pretty specific on that list because his use of adjectives. There's a sentence in one of his books that's over 120 words long.
He's a very flowery writer. I mean, I actually like his style. I just wish that he would nail some things down when it comes to the monsters.
Yeah, but it's both the positive and the negative of Lovecraft in that he allows you the opportunity to sit there and come up with the craziest stuff that your imagination. Like, I think he realized that his imagination was past the point where language would do it any justice. And then he gave us all the opportunity to let our subconscious go a little crazy with it.
Yeah.
As someone who hasn't read a lot of his stuff, even though I own it all, because we both bought that book, but I've watched movies and seen movies that are kind of influenced. But he seems to have this worldview where he's terrified of some cosmic force that can't be understood coming in, and that seems to be the major thing. I think the people who are experiencing whatever horrible things are going on can't even comprehend what they are experiencing.
He had the experience. Sorry, John.
It's okay.
He had the experience of watching his dad basically go schizophrenic.
Oh, okay.
And end result was he became both the way that you would be. You're both fascinated and terrified by the things that are closest to you that are scary. And he was wondering, I think after a moment like that, if you've ever seen somebody around you kind of lose themselves to madness, you have to wonder what's going on in their head. And at the same time, this was also the beginning of the era where, like, for example, Webster Hubble had figured out that what initially everybody thought were giant pockets of gas that they were seeing in the background of their pictures of the stars were actually other galaxies that were filled full of billions of stars. And that's a moment when you actually stop to think about it, smacks you in the face and puts you right in your place and says, you're a really, really tiny part of this universe.
I forgot where
scare the shit out of somebody.
Yeah, I forgot where that was kind of addressed in there's actually these two family movies that are actually really cool called H.P. Lovecraft and the Undersea Kingdom and H.P. Lovecraft and the Frozen, is it the Frozen Kingdom. Yeah. And they're actually really cool because they have like Jeffrey Combs in them and stuff like that, and there's monsters, but it's still a family movie. But they actually do deal with schizophrenia and some of that stuff in the background. So I actually forgot that he had that in his history.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those where you sit there and I think madness goes hand in hand with this story as well, because you're experiencing people being driven insane by the experience of seeing the world change around them. And if you think about the era that Lovecraft grew up in and hit his majority in, it was post the First World War. It was post the first big modern bout of insanity that we had, not just as a nation, but as a world. And also you had the advent of, oh, wait a minute, we're not just a planet and a solar system, we're part of a universe, and that universe is infinitely bigger than we are. And then the realization that something coming out of that universe could destroy us without even realizing we were here in the first place.
Yeah. There's a passage that really kind of sums up the whole H.P. Lovecraft universe and the being driven mad in it.
Hi, I'm currently here at 10 Barnes Street in Providence, Rhode Island, and this is the home where H.P. Lovecraft wrote Call of Cthulhu and Shadow over Innsmouth. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its content.
In the midst of black seas.
We live on a placid island.
And it was not meant that we should
in the midst of black seas of infinity. And it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in their own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
But this movie does a really fantastic job of kind of showing how one of those outside influences of the many can open doors to other realities and other wisdoms that exist. Lavinia, at the end of the movie, she had started cutting herself up, you know, and she actually cut her third eye into her forehead, and that third eye becomes active, like her pineal gland woke up, kind of like in From Beyond. And that happened because of the power, the existence in this color. And she was able, so the narrator, the geologist, finds her at the end and goes up to her and asks what happened to her, and looks into that third eye and sees these vast vistas of this other world, of this other dimension, where there's creatures standing on these huge towers of stone. And that gives me goosebumps, because, you know, a lot of what Lovecraft describes is very this cyclopean, you know, universe, and how, you know, he uses that word a lot, cyclopean, you know, and to describe the things that people are seeing in front of them that are leading to their madness. And because they just can't fathom the size of what these other beings could possibly be compared to them. It shows how this color seeps into everything. It seeps into the water, seeps into the ground, it seeps into the fertilized eggs of insects. And when those insects,
the insects were cool.
Hatch, there was that mantis.
That thing reminded me of those the real life insects that Coyote Peterson would allow to sting him. They're like these terrifying looking giant things that would send you into waves of pain for 27 minutes. Yeah, and this one was like a mantis type creature. And when they when they first introduced it showed the egg hatching, and then it shows a first person view from the perspective of the insect climbing up the well and going up to the little kid. I can't remember his name. I'll refer to him as Timmy, because he ends up in the well. By the well. And it looks at him and sees him through this array of those colors, those unknown.
His
colors,
name was Jack, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Pardon?
Jack Gardner.
Okay. And who is a fantastic little actor.
Yeah.
Broke my heart in several scenes.
Oh God.
Oh, yeah.
This
so they show this bug's face, and they show the tentacles starting to come out of its mouth. I was just like, yes.
Give us our tentacles,
it gets into everything, including the alpacas, including the father and mother. And
Are the alpacas in the original story, or is that something that? Okay,
oh, I think they just tacked that on.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that was not in.
What the? Okay, so this is like I'd say this is right up there with. I won't say that I enjoy it as much as these two movies, but it's right up there with Alien and The Thing.
Yes.
In terms of being monster movies that really cross over from being fun. Even Cronenberg's The Fly has an element of fun to it, where you're like, ooh, he just oozed this all over his head. This is like Alien or The Thing, where you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at?
Yeah.
There's also an element, all three of those films, Alien, The Thing, and Color Out of Space, there's a feeling of claustrophobia in all three films, that you can't escape what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Because escape becomes part of the plot line of this film, and their attempts to do so just completely fail.
Yeah. And especially it leads to the freak out. This movie's freak out scene by my brain.
Nick Cage.
By Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm.
In his long line of freak out scenes. This probably rates 10 Nick Cages.
Yeah.
I would have to say. This has a rating of 10 Nick Cages.
Take a drink for every time Nicolas Cage screams out the word cocksucker in that car.
Yeah.
No, because then I would have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, that was reminiscent of the scene in Mandy where he's in the bathroom in his tighty whities, losing his mind.
Except I think that scene works in Mandy, and I think there are so. I like this movie, and I'm just putting this out there. There are several scenes that don't work for me, like some of the Nicolas Cage freakouts just seem like.
This is a film where I'm sitting around going, the rest of the cast is absolutely on point, and Nicolas Cage is acting in a different film.
Yeah, I honestly think it's a continuity issue.
Yeah,
I think that the director was maybe afraid to direct Nick Cage because
I jokingly say this film is peak Nick Cage.
Yes, yes.
He has some of his best acting in this movie.
Oh,
but
sure.
he has some of his worst acting in this movie.
His acting in this is bipolar. I mean, there are moments when he's absolutely on point, and then there are moments when he's like, they're over there, do the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I think it's a continuity issue where they film different scenes out of order.
Yeah.
And
maybe they didn't tell Nick how Nicholas he was supposed to be that day.
Yeah, I think it's partially Nick Cage, but I think it's also partially direction. It's like they didn't have a manager or something.
Stanley's a great storyteller and very bold, but he hasn't directed a lot, so maybe he's. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Maybe he's
because I just have a feeling that they just told Nick Cage to do it.
Yeah.
And
do your Nick Cage shit. And
and they didn't take into account where in the film that scene
maybe that was just for the trailer reel, but then somebody left it into the movie.
Oh, by the way, side note, there is a podcast that Shudder does called Visitations. That is done
Elijah
by
Wood.
Yeah, Elijah Wood and Daniel Noah, who are producers on this film. And they have a great interview with Richard Stanley while he was shooting this film. Can't recommend it enough. Totally worth checking out.
Okay.
Sorry,
Cool.
just had to throw that in.
Did he get to? Is this his director's cut, or is this compromised in some way? I know his previous films are very compromised.
With RLJE, I think this is probably maybe not the director's cut, but it's interfered with in a minimum of the primary issue with director's cuts is they tend to be really fucking long.
Yeah.
And so you have to sit there and cut some of the tissue out of there. If Richard Stanley has a director's cut of this, I'd like to see it because there are moments where I think part of my problem with Nick Cage's acting in this is because it's so bipolar, that I'm wondering if there's connective tissue that got cut out of this film.
That's what because there's something. I mean, there's moments where he's like Harrison Ford in the Mosquito Coast, or like or he's pulling a Jack
Mosquito
Nicholson.
Coast is a great film.
It is.
Yeah.
And or Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but all the scenes around it are different movies, so it's just very out of place.
This is a film where you sit there, you know the plot coming in, you know that it's an H.P. Lovecraft story, so it's going to end horribly. But the primary part for me, the thing that made it work was, first of all, the directing. The shots are amazing. It's not quite Panos Cosmatos or A.T. White or somebody like that. But he's got an incredible eye for setting a scene in such a way that you can see where everything transitioned from this is our reality to shit got weird.
It's visually very pretty to look at.
Yeah. And I think that the acting, absent Nicolas Cage, everybody in this film, God, they're fucking amazing.
They are. And
there are no bad performances in this film.
And so is he. Right. He's amazing in about 85% of the time.
Yeah. And then occasionally he throws something in there where you're like, too much. Dial it back.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age.
See, I understand where he's coming from based on what I've heard Dave talk about and some of the things that you've mentioned, but I just share in a completely diametrically opposed worldview.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
No,
knowledge brings more peace than
I'm with you on that. At the same time, I just came up with the idea of a series of stories / TV show where you have the subset of Starfleet whose job it is to go and investigate really, really weird shit. When you sit there and go, so anyway, yeah, you handled this planet, but yeah, Captain Kirk went running from that. This is the crew that goes, made up full of partially crazy people who handle these situations.
Well, I have I have the Jungian approach where you face the shadow, and that's interesting in drama too to me.
Yep.
And cathartic, and Lovecraft seems to be arguing to me to shy away from confronting that.
But I think that Lovecraft, we're going to sit around and talk about him as a writer, then the person has to come into it. And
which is not to say, like I said, he's not. I mean, he's
yeah.
The thing that John just read was very eloquent. So
yeah, incredible writer, but there's an element of xenophobia to what he has in his mind. So these ideas coming from the outside and such were probably things that when he saw them, he felt a reflexive fear to them, realizing that the universe is way bigger. There's a subtext of racism pretty much shot throughout all of his work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, fear of the outsider is a constant in all fiction. And he just basically took the outsider and turned it into beings that scared the shit out of us by sitting there and giving enough description that you filled in the rest of the blanks and went, nope.
It's weird that if he hasn't given more specific instructions about what they look like, that most of the depictions of Lovecraftian creatures look very similar to each other.
Well, I think
actually, once you read through the book, you'll see that there is description in a lot of the major creatures in the stories. There is enough description. In fact, Call of Cthulhu, he actually drew a picture of what Cthulhu looked like, and everything has been based on that.
Yeah,
on that picture that he drew. In fact, he drew what he drew was the idol, was the fetish, or so whatever you want to call it.
It wasn't the actual Cthulhu. It was what a culture would have.
He drew the bas relief.
Yeah,
that was made in stone of Cthulhu.
And I think that part of it is also the idea that if you're used to wandering around and seeing how people move about on land, the first time you see an octopus or a squid, it looks like a completely alien creature because it lacks that, because of the fact that it's all soft tissue, it lacks that solidity of movement that you're used to seeing.
Well, not only that, but recent scientific papers have been written on the fact that they believe that a portion of the DNA that is in an octopus is alien to this planet, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
because there's another thing that Lovecraft pinned in on, is that, and this is before astronomers discovered this.
But who's the person? What's the group that has asserted this? It's not the Ancient Aliens crowd, is it?
No.
Okay.
This is actually stuff that people have contacted on, have actually spent time and studied the genetics on.
Yeah. These are geneticists that have figured out that there are parts of octopus DNA that were not originally from Earth. So anyway, the other thing that he pinned on was that there was another planet out there, because originally they thought that, and we call it now 8 planets in the solar system, where we used to call it 9, but before that we called it 8 because Pluto hadn't been discovered. Well, Lovecraft wrote about a 9th planet that was very tiny and so far on the outreaches of the solar system, and it was also the source of many of these elder gods, and that was called Yuggoth.
Yep.
And
You referenced that in our John Dies at the End review.
Yep.
Yeah, and and so then years later they discover, well, you know what? There is a 9th planet, and it's like Lovecraft described it, and maybe there are elder beings on it. You never know. So so Color Out of Space, so the movie, I wanted to make some points about that, as far as the how well they kind of wanted to keep it very, nice.
What is that?
That is a pineapple mango hard seltzer. Somehow it fell into my hand. Okay, John, continue. My apologies.
It fell into your hand?
Just from out of nowhere.
Oh, okay.
It drops
From the colors out of space.
Yes.
Yep.
Tell me what color it tastes like.
Cider out of space.
It's kind of a burnt orange.
Okay.
It's definitely got that sort of citrus feel to it, but there's a little bit of darkness and smokiness to it as well.
Mm.
So anyway, I apologize. I interrupted John.
What's interesting to me is that this movie kind of embraces a 50s vibe a little bit with the asteroid and the monsters, but it also feels very mean-spirited, like The Mist.
Because
I don't how mean is the story, because there's scenes in here that are just fucking mean. Like
it's the same.
The woman absorbs her son, reabsorbs her son, so it's like an unbirth.
It's like an unbirth, but also she was a victim of breast cancer and had a double mastectomy. Well, at least it's alluded. Yeah. And
is that in the book as well?
No. Okay, so and in fact, here's the parallel between the book and the son and the mother. First, the mother is the first one that goes mad in the book as far as of the family. And she is then locked up into one of the rooms upstairs
after cutting off her fingers and absorbing her own son.
Yeah. No. That's it. That's in the movie, not in the book.
Okay.
In the book, she's the first one to go mad and start muttering. Seems to be inarticulately speaking in a foreign language.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, I mean, he knows that his son is also infected, but he lets him run around and scream his mutterings just around the farmyard for a few days before he locks him up into a different room upstairs. But it describes how they can be heard muttering to each other between the two rooms in this otherworldly language. And I think that what they did in the movie is great. I mean, they basically melded the two of them together and had them both muttering, as well in this insane kind of speech.
Is the story as afraid of sex as Richard Stanley makes the movie? Because the first monster attack happens when they first have their first intercourse in like 6 months, and then it's all very tied in. I mean, then there's the unbirth.
There's Lovecraft is pretty much, I wouldn't say anti-sexuality as much as it is asexuality. Sex and sexuality are not part of the Lovecraft universe, except in a
Aaron Stewart Gordon's versions.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely see an awful lot of Eastern Protestant mindset regarding sex in Lovecraft stories, and it kind of shows through in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's never really a big thing in Lovecraft. He, however, was described by his wife as a fantastically adequate lover. What that could possibly mean, I don't know. But fantastically adequate.
Good at it when he did it. I have a sneaking suspicion he might have been talked into trying to do it.
He's extremely okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
Moderately neato, to borrow a phrase from
moderately neato.
to borrow a phrase from George Carlin. Yeah.
The movie is so fucking weird. She cuts her own fingers off and continues to cut into an onion. So they go to the doctor to have the fingers reattached, and they're gone for probably 36 hours or so, and then everything goes fucking bonkers back at the house with the kids.
Yeah. And there isn't. I don't believe. I can't. I for some reason can't remember, but I don't believe that there isn't a daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's the major part of this movie. She's
yeah.
And there's maybe Dave can answer this because you're into the whole you have experience in this. So the geologist asks her if it's Wicca that she's following or some other,
or Alexandrian.
What is that? Enlighten me. I don't know the difference.
Okay, Wicca is broken up into, like every other religion, it's kind of broken up into different factions and such. Alexandrian is a bit closer to like ritual magic in the Crowleyan sense. Dianic is a bit more focused on goddess. I shouldn't say a bit more. It's way more focused on goddess sexuality or goddess divinity, to be a bit closer to it. But when you're sitting around and you're talking with people who are pagans, finding out which particular style or flavor of their belief system tells you an awful lot of how it is they view the world. So Alexandrians, there's much more of a focus on degree work and building up your base of knowledge rather than acting in the moment.
She's very focused on ritual, and she does several. They ultimately lead to her mutilating herself in several ways.
Of which none of that is in the story.
Yeah,
the book.
In the film, though, there's an element of. I mean, part of it is the idea of creating in that particular mindset. There's an element that goes hand in hand of ritual magic where you sit there and you create a mindset that allows you to view the world as a magical place, that everything you do is an inherent value of magic. And her sitting there, because the first time you see her, and it's the opening shot of the film, she's doing a circle ritual of healing and such. And I thought, okay, that really set the tone right from the outset.
It allows us to know what's going on with her mom too, because she explicitly says what's going on.
Yeah, it's nature versus the upcoming infection and all of that, and that really sets the tone for it. And also considering that Richard Stanley is very much a person who has a magical mindset for the world, that goes hand in hand with everything about this film.
So I like all these movies. I actually like all this Lovecraft. The Thing. I mean, The Thing isn't explicitly a Lovecraft movie, but it's very Lovecraftian. But
right.
But my favorite Lovecraft stuff is the sleazy stuff from Stuart Gordon from Beyond and Reanimator. So
yeah.
And because it's also a lot more fun. I will say I love this movie. I watched it twice now this year, but I don't see myself watching it a bunch of times. It's very taxing.
It starts off, fairly dark, and by the time it's done, it gets to like near singularity levels of darkness.
Yeah, it's the movie is foreboding.
Yeah,
I mean it becomes sad, and it really draws you into the sadness. I mean, when the mother and the son have been already dragged upstairs, and the boy starts screaming.
Yeah,
just like I can't
out of her back. Oh,
but I think that goes hand in hand with, as much as I think love in this case, it was something that Lovecraft didn't do such a great. He kind of did a great job, but I think that Stanley did a better job of bringing it out. is the idea that even though there are these incredible cosmic forces that have no real concern over how it is that they are impacting you, they can just walk right over you without even knowing. It's the equivalent of realizing that you are probably an ant in relation to a human being.
Yeah.
But
It's got the
in this
kaiju
case,
effect.
yeah, it's still that moment of you see the impact of a primal force damaging the people around it without even realizing that it's happening, but seeing the damage and the after effect. I mean, those scenes with the mother and the son are horrifying and terrifying on a very, very primal level, and that's why it works. Because I think the thing that horror misses sometimes is that ability to show the impact and make you feel empathy for the victim. And in those scenes, if you can miss the impact on the victim, you have issues.
Yeah.
It's like it's weird. Like movies like Friday the 13th make you kind of look forward to the next kill. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
This is the total inverse of that.
Yeah. So I mean, but you're watching that and like you're more interested in how did they do that with the visual trick of like Kevin Bacon getting the knife through the neck.
But I think that it also goes.
Here you're just like the effects are it's almost secondary to the feeling of dread and hopelessness that kind of overcomes you.
But it's the difference between there's a great book by a French philosopher called Guy Debord, where he talks about the society of spectacle. Friday the 13th is pretty much, and I will also pick on pretty much all of the 80s slasher films. I enjoy them, but
which we love.
Yeah, which we love. We're all fans of. I love Halloween. I love the entire Freddy series. I love Friday the 13th. But they're about spectacle, and you walk in knowing that basically you're doing the modern equivalent of walking into a Roman arena. I wonder if somebody's going to get their arm cut off.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this is going to happen. Here, this is a film where it's the inverse of that, where we sit around and you have a moment of genuine empathy for the people who are caught in this situation. And you can draw an analogy to it to natural disasters. You can draw an analogy to it to people who have lost a member of their family to violence. The analogy for what Stanley was doing in this is to sit there and go, hey, as much as we all enjoy a good horror film, let's talk about the actual realistic impact of what happened to people.
But the thing is, he's giving us what we say we want when we walk into the arena, but then he makes us feel shitty about it. And I think in a good way. But.
Yeah, I'm saying there's plenty of room for both of these. There are times when we need that capacity to sit there and go, let's watch somebody get cut into pieces, because goddamn, there's a moment where you sit there and you kind of want that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this is the counterbalancing effect where we sit there and go, oh, those are real human beings who feel real pain, and this is fucking and it counterbalances, and it reminds you that the people on the receiving end of this are fellow human beings, and we should probably keep that in mind.
Yeah.
A press play on my end.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Although, like I said, I'm not going to be revisiting it again anytime soon. Twice in 1 year was enough for me. It's too intense for just a monster movie for me to just say throw it in any day of the week.
Yeah. For me, it's an absolute press play. I've pressed play, I think, probably a dozen times now. And again, now we've all sat and spoken about this movie for, at length for a while. And, we really didn't, I mean, we kind of in a broken up way kind of described what happened in the film, but we talked a lot of, feeling that it gave us. And, we touched on certain scenes of the film and things like that, and what the overall arc of the film is. So you really, I mean, this is a film you just really have to watch.
Yeah. It's an experience.
And if you're
a film.
Yeah. If you're a Lovecraft fan, you're going to absolutely love this film. It's probably the most faithfully done Lovecraft film that I've seen, with the exception possibly of the black and white silent film Call of Cthulhu that was done by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. Oh, we were talking about, you know, the interactions and all of that. But you really, I mean, to really get a grip on this movie for, you know, the flow and everything else, you just have to watch it. And now that we've all talked about it in depth again, and kind of I've heard your takes on it, I'm probably going to watch it again today, to be honest. I just finished watching it before we started filming, but I think I need to take another look at it again after, you know, and hold some of those thoughts that you guys had in on it as well.
I think you're the expert, though. I mean, you kind of added things to me to check out again. If I were to check it out again, I'd probably get more. I just can't.
Yeah, it's definitely a press play film for me, and I think a lot of it is that the storytelling is really good. The acting, by and large, is amazing. But to me, the best part is it's an absolute visual treat to watch. It does a great job of incorporating those elements that we always, you know, thought about when reading a Lovecraft story, and turning them into something where you sit there and go, oh, that's what that is about. It's one of the very few translations of a Lovecraft story where the visuals really do scare the shit out of you every bit as much as the story did.
In the 80s, I always felt like these scenes where there would be like lots of lightning and stuff like in Howard the Duck, you know, like I felt like that's kind of what they would throw at you when they were running out of shit to do. But here, you know, all these flashing colors, and it's just like adding to the whole thing. It's compounding the mystery.
Honestly, I mean, you know, when everything culminates into that final scene of explosion in the film where, you know, the geologist runs away from Lavinia and gets into the basement, you know, he's being called upstairs by the force of this color. You know, it wants him as well. And it's almost as if it's looking for him through Nick Cage's character. Boy, wow, we missed kind of a whole little, you know, interesting part of that. In that, you know, when he goes and looks in on Nick Cage's character at the end, he's watching television, and he asks him, you know, well, where is your family? You know, and he says, well, they're right here. That's right from the book, you know.
That whole scene is a moment where you sit there and go, well, it's all got, I mean, like, we all knew it was going to shit. We all knew it was heading completely south. And that is the moment where you sit there and face the terrifying circumstances of, yeah, as bad as you thought it was way, way worse, and had been for much longer than you thought it was.